I had this flashback that I just had to share with you because my eldest, when she was a toddler, she used to get car sick all the time. And she was an expert barfer. Like she learned over time to just we would have a bag back there and she would just barf in the bag. So we had gotten McDonald's and so of course we're driving and she threw up, but she threw up all over the back of the car. So we pull over and we do what we can to clean up. And I remember my husband at the time was cleaning up all the French fries, getting all the barf. And then when we got back in the car, he was eating her leftover fries. Looking at him being like, oh my God, that's disgusting. He was like, oh, I was hungry, So it's just such a parenting move. Like, it's just like, okay, we're going to clean up the barf fries and then we're going to eat the rest of the fries because when you think pre-kids, you would never do something like that. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. It was a nice
Oh my
I had
God.
that made me LOL in the car yesterday.
God. I mean, just managing that. Bon appetit.
Bon appetit. We are so thrilled to bring you part 2 of our amazing conversation with the incredible Paige Connell. From the very start of this podcast, we've wanted to dig deep into the mental load of motherhood, and Paige puts words to so many of the things we feel, but don't always know how to say. Paige is a working mom of 4 whose honest, relatable voice has resonated with millions on TikTok and Instagram. She shines a light on the invisible burdens we carry while also advocating for affordable childcare, paid leave, and reproductive rights. Her perspective is refreshing, validating, and so needed. We'll know you'll walk away from this conversation feeling seen, supported, and inspired. So let's jump in with the amazing Paige Connell.
Yeah. And I think that terminology control freak, women are accused of that all the time. So I always ask, right? Men will say, I had this video that went viral where I said, a man said, if women are so burnt out by the mental load, they just have to ask for help and we'll do it. And I said, I think a lot of women do ask for help, right? And they ask for help and they tell their partner what to do, but they don't want to have to tell you what to do, right? They don't want to have to monitor you. They don't want to have to check to make sure you did it. And the pushback I often get from men, I like to address the pushback because I think it's important, which is like, well, every time I do it, she tells me I did it wrong. And I say, is she telling you did it wrong or is she providing feedback on a task? And are her standards too high or do you two have different standards? And has she been held to higher standards than you, right? Because I think there is a double standard in our society about what we expect from moms and dads, right? So if we have baseball practice, we have dance. If I decide to get pizza, people are going to be like, well, that's not a very healthy dinner. If my husband gets pizza, he's a fun dad. There's a different expectation of moms and dads, even the terminology we use. You hear people often say, oh, he's such a hands-on dad. You would never call a mom a hands-on mom. People will say he's a present dad. Nobody ever calls a mom a present mom. We are just default moms. It is the expectation that we are there. This happens in subtle ways too. At the grocery store, when your kid's having a tantrum, people give you the side eye. When a kid's having a tantrum for your husband, they're like, oh, do you need help? Is he okay? Like, what can I do to help you? It's a very different experience. And so I understand from the male perspective why it's frustrating because they're like, I'm doing more than my father ever did. I'm getting a pat on the back when I'm out with the kids. Like everybody else thinks I'm great. And my wife thinks I'm not. Like my wife's always telling me I need to do better, but everyone else is telling me I'm a hero over here because I took the kid to soccer practice. And so there's this disconnect between the expectations that exist in the home and what society expects of men. So I can empathize with that. But at the end of the day, I always say, your partner's standards are probably there for a reason. So if you feel like her standards are too high, instead of saying you're a control freak, your standards are too high, have a conversation. Why are these standards important to you? Why does this matter to you? Why is this something you care so much about? Let's go from the lens of everybody has good intent as opposed to she's trying to hold me to unrealistic expectations. And assuming again that everybody has good intent here. If you came to me and said, why is it important to you that I fold the laundry this way? I might tell you, well, I'm trying to teach our 3-year-old how to dress herself. And when you fold it stacked up like this, she doesn't know what's in the pile. And then she rips everything out of the pile. And then I have to put everything back into the pile. And it's a mess every single morning. And I do mornings by myself. If you fold them this way, she can see all of her shirts. And then she knows which one's her favorite shirt. And she pulls out her favorite shirt and there's no mess for me. And she's able to get dressed easily. And then my morning goes more smoothly. So now my standard of you folding and putting it away a certain way doesn't seem so crazy. It doesn't sound like I'm a control freak. It sounds like I had a process for doing this that made everybody's lives run more smoothly. And if you were the person getting the toddler dressed every morning and cleaning up the mess that was on the floor from her digging out her favorite shirt, you too might be folding it differently. And so I encourage people to have those conversations, bridge that gap and say, I'm going to assume there's a reason my partner likes it done this way. And if there isn't a good reason why you like something done that way, then maybe have some capacity for your partner to do it differently than you, because that's okay too. But a lot of times there is a good reason behind a certain expectation or standard.
Yeah. Well, tradition too. If traditionally my mom always did it this way or my dad always did it this
Yeah.
way, it seems that maybe it would be easier to honor that the load be more equally distributed because then you wouldn't just be like, I just got to fold this really quick. But have you had a little less surrounding that, you might be able to say, like, I know they like the toilet paper roll put on this way versus this way. I have no problem making that change. No
Yeah.
In a dynamic where, okay, so you often talk about both working full time, both having equal responsibility. Okay. So if there is one partner that has maybe longer hours or is working more that way, the other one is at home, maybe not working full time, but still working and taking on all of the responsibilities. How is a
Mhm.
fair conversation had if one is saying, well, I am the one spending, 14 hours a day out of the house. How can I be of help when you're at home most of the time?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple ways to talk about this. First and foremost, that's why we use the term equity. It can't ever really be equal. I have a partner like that. There's days where he works 18-hour days and I just, I don't really even see him. I'm in bed when he gets home. And I'm sleeping when he leaves. So, I mean, there's that, dynamic. A lot of women will say like, oh, I love this idea, but my husband's a shift worker or he does a lot of overnights, whatever it might be. So there's no one perfect solution. What I would say is there are things your partner can do to alleviate your mental load, even if they're not physically present. I know most women, when they are at work, are also answering emails from school, are also refilling prescriptions, are also filling out forms for their kids in those little moments in between. I know
Mhm.
every single mom that I know is doing that. Like every mom I know. So we can also expect that of our partners. If they are, if your husband's a surgeon, I'm not going to ask him to step outside of the OR, right, to do something. But I think if your partner works a very long day, but they have those breaks the same way you do, there should not be this expectation that you're working 24/7 just because your job's more flexible or you work less hours. That's a big part of the mental load. It's that background work. It's not the actual like physical making dinner, taking care of kids. It's thinking about calling insurance companies, sending that email to the kid's doctor, responding to this form that you have for soccer practice, right? Those things can happen whether or not you're physically present at home. So if you own those things, you can do them even if you're not at home. But also asking yourself the question, what can I do to make things run more smoothly in my absence? So for example, my husband leaves before I'm awake every single day. That has just always been how it goes. So I do mornings by myself. But when we started making these shifts at home, he took on a few things in the mornings because he gets to wake up, have his coffee, walk out the door, never sees any of us. And I wake up to a dog, 4 kids, like chaos. And I'm like, I run around for 2.5 hours and then I have to start work immediately. I barely have time to eat breakfast. And he said, you know what would make this sound silly because this is really small, but would make a world of a difference in my morning is if every morning you made sure the dishwasher was fully emptied. So I had access to every dish that I needed, every cup, every plate, all the things. You took the dog outside and fed the dog. So that was one less person or thing I had to think about. And you filled the kids' water bottles. Because
Mm.
that sounds silly, but it takes like 10 minutes to stand there filling water bottles and like all the things. So if you could just do those things in the mornings, that would save me 20 to 25 minutes every single morning. And I already have this like 2.5 hour like mad dash to bus stop, daycare, drop off. If you could do that, that would make a world of a difference in my life. And that is what my husband does every single day before he goes to work. So he's not here in the mornings with me. He can't get the kids dressed or take them to school or any of those things, but he does still play a part in our morning routine, whether or not he's physically here when I am. So I think you can have those kinds of conversations. And then I think the added layer to all of this is time. I really encourage people not to compare how much they earn to their partner and compare that to how much work they do at home. I think the only way you can earn your way out of doing chores is if you're paying to outsource them. I don't care how much more you make than your partner. There's no amount of money that earns you your partner's time in a marriage, right? You can't say, I make 2 times as much as you, therefore you do the laundry. That's just like not how a relationship works. So let's talk about time as our currency, which is okay, you work 14-hour days, which means I'm working 14-hour days with the kids and with my full-time job. And so when you're not working and I'm not working, are you getting the opportunity to work out on your 14-hour days? Do you have an hour lunch break where you go to the gym? Do I ever
Mhm.
have an hour lunch break where I get to go to the gym? Let's have a conversation about what our time looks like and make sure that feels fair. And, so in my home, again, I'm a spreadsheet gal. We use spreadsheets. And I said, okay, on an average week, I have this much solo parenting time. You have this much solo parenting time. You have this much time to work out. I have this much time to work out or see friends or whatever, X, Y, and Z hobbies. You have this many working hours. I have this many working hours. And we looked at it. And when we originally looked at it, my husband definitely works, like works more hours than I do, paid hours than I do, but he had more time each week for himself. He had like an hour to 2 hours a day to go to the gym or listen to a podcast, just sit on the couch and scroll TikTok, whatever it is. And I didn't have that. And I said, well, yeah, you're working more paid hours, but I don't get any time for myself. And so I encourage people to have that conversation about time. Right. We want to also have equity with our time. We want both people to feel rested and refreshed and as if they have time to enjoy things outside of, your home and motherhood and marriage and your job. So I've shared this before. I see my friends once a week. Like that's like just something I do. It's something I built into my calendar. And that's really important to me. And I'm only able to do that because we've done this work of making sure that we have a fair share of time.
Time is currency. I remember, people would say, you should go to therapy. It's really good. You really should work out. You should go for a run in the morning. And I used to laugh out loud, be like, when am I going to have time?
Yeah.
Are you writing a book? You-
Maybe.
It may be in the works. I don't know.
We'll see. Yeah. Yeah. I get asked that a lot. I think my biggest thing is yeah, it's on the radar for sure. And I have a team that I'm working with. But like I said, there's a lot of books out there about the mental load. And I wanna make sure that I kind of connect those dots for people. I know that my quote unquote like superpower in this space is being able to put words to these experiences in a way that maybe helps other people explain it in their own lives. And I tell people this all the time because I'll get the comment like, "Oh, put this on his For You page," or this should be on his feed. And I say, "No, it shouldn't. My goal is not to attack your husband in his Instagram feed. My goal is to help you, anybody, the listener, whomever, start to understand it for yourself, and then feel like you have the ability to articulate it to your partner or whoever you want to talk to about it. My goal at the end of the day, the reason I create the content I do is because when I was in the thick of it, I couldn't have even explained to anybody what I was feeling. I couldn't say." I'm burnt out and resentful. I couldn't tell you. I was like, I felt this like feeling in my chest where I was like, I don't want to spend time with my husband. I couldn't tell you why, but like being around him makes me irrationally angry right now. And I'm burnt out and exhausted, but I also couldn't say that. And I couldn't articulate what was happening. I felt it in my body. I felt it in all these different ways. It was impacting my life, but I couldn't articulate it. And once I was able to articulate it, I was able to actually change these dynamics. I was able to have a conversation with my partner and we were able to, yeah, navigate what this looked like for us, but without the terminology, without the language, without the ways to explain it in a way that actually made sense to my, because you can use the clinical terms and be like, I'm doing a lot of emotional labor here. And my partner would be like, okay, what are we talking about? Like, what are we talking about? I think it's helpful to be able to say to somebody like the reason I'm feeling frustrated right now with you is because you committed to doing something. And when you dropped the ball, it became my responsibility and it feels like I can't trust you. Right? Like being able to say that to my partner was much more helpful than me being like, what the F, you forgot the dishwasher again? Like, that's not a productive conversation for anybody. And I think that's where we find ourselves is like at a place where we don't know how to articulate it. And so we just fight about silly things like the dishwasher or the trash or whatever.
Right. But to your point, it's like that's that's kind of broad stroke. Like we need to go
Yeah.
back to like get into, just affirming everything that you were saying, which is get into the specifics of what it is coming from and stemming from this place like we both want this, we both want to do this, both partners want to do this.
Yeah.
And I think that is sometimes often where it can get tricky because there might be one partner that doesn't want to do it, and I think it needs to start from that place,
Yeah.
a common sort of roadblock that you need to get past before we start to dive into this stuff.
For sure. I mean, I tell everybody the first question you have to ask yourself is do I have a partner who loves me and cares about my happiness and well being and is willing and able to have hard conversations and adapt within this relationship? You have to ask yourself that first. I knew that I had that. I'd been with my husband, I think at that point, I don't know, 15, 16 years. So I knew who he was. I knew that he'd adapted and changed before. I knew that we'd had hard conversations and that he loved me and wanted me to be happy. Like I knew all of those things. I wasn't worried about that. I knew we weren't aligned. I knew we were struggling to figure it out. I knew that he was at a point where he's like, I don't know what to do to make her happy. And I was like, I don't know how to be happy in this situation either.
And how
Um,
to articulate it, like you said, you weren't sure how to do that.
and we didn't have a path forward. We didn't have a plan. We didn't have a method. We didn't have, yeah, like it was really hard. And, for me, what I encourage people is first ask yourself that question. If your answer to that question is, I don't know if my partner wants me to be happy and I don't trust that they're willing and able, and or they've told you I'm not willing to have this conversation, this is that's a whole different conversation you're having. Like these are two separate paths, right? So you gotta decide on those. But if you feel like you both want to put in the work and you both want to do this, it does require two people to do it, equally committed. But I encourage people not to start with the like, I do this, you do that, we need to fix this. I actually encourage you to start like a little further back and a little bit higher, which is high level. Let's set a goal on why we're having this conversation, right? So, like, as a couple, my partner and I, our goal was to share the work of our home more equitably. My individual goal, I said to my partner, my goal in this conversation is I need more time. I need time for myself. I am at max capacity. I am pouring into everyone else. And it feels like nobody, including myself, is pouring back into me. And I need more time. I need us to figure this out because I need space and time for myself to be a person and to feel like I have that space. So that was my goal, my individual goal. We had our collective goal, which is to find a way for our home to operate more effectively, and to share the work in a more fair way. And when I'd asked my husband, I said, "What is your goal?" And he was like, "I just want us to be able to have fun again." That was his goal. He's like, "I feel like we're not having fun." He's like, "You're frustrated and resentful. I feel like I can't make you happy. It feels like we don't ever go on a date. And when we do, we have like nothing to talk about because we're both just like too deep in this. And we used to have so much fun and I want to have fun again." That was his goal. And I told him, I said, I think I will get there, but like I need the time. I don't have the capacity to have fun. You take me on a date night and I'm exhausted. I have nothing to say. I'm so tired. Like there's nothing left in me. And so we set these goals. And then when we went into the conversation, it wasn't a fight about dishwashers or things. It was like, okay, it is you and I against this overwhelming amount of work. We are working towards a goal together. How do we get there? And this is not to say it was always smooth and easy and we never fought along the way. Of course we did. But it is to say that if you go into it with the perspective that it's the two of you against this problem, which is all of this work, and that you have a goal you're both trying to get to, and you keep that in mind constantly, then you can work together towards that goal. But if you are in it just to say, like, if you just sit down and say, like, this is my list, this is your list, I do so much more, you don't do enough, and you don't view it as a combined collective effort, then it's really hard to move forward because it does get into this like tit for tat dynamic. And that's typically not super productive.
Bravo, sis. This is the book. Here's your book right here.
Applause.
Oh my gosh. I'd like to go back really quick to this whole idea of checking all this out during the dating phase, because this would have
Yeah.
never, ever crossed my mind, for so many reasons. But hindsight, you're thinking like, these are the things, if the goal is to have a family, if the goal, but not even that, if the goal is to get to live together and partner together in this life, talking about more equitable
Mhm.
relationship, I just think is really cool, because I just feel like sometimes, you date, then you get married, and then you have a family or you don't have a family, but all of a sudden you're in this together, and sometimes it can just hit you like, whoa, this is, no one really prepared us for this, or we didn't prepare ourselves for this, or we always talk about like red flags, but
Yeah.
maybe it's something to think about if the goal is to be in partnership.
Yeah. Yeah, I always hear this sentiment. I'm obviously chronically online because of my job, and there's this overwhelming idea of like, oh, if he wanted to, he would. This idea of like, if you're dating a guy and he wanted to, share things fairly, he would. And I actually don't think that's true. I really do think that, like, as a society, we prepare men and women different for relationships and for life in general. And we condition them in different ways. And even the marketing and the TV we consume shows us tropes, right, of men and women and the nagging wife and the bumbling husband and all the things. And we make it look cute and whatever. And we normalize it, right? And so men grow up and they don't actually really know what it looks like to be a really, truly equitable partner. They think they do. Like, I changed diapers. My dad never changed diapers. And it's like, sure. Do you know where we buy the diapers though? Like, that would be helpful, right? So, I think like men surface level understand like what we expect now, but it's that secondary level. And I think some people will say, oh, if they don't, then just write them off. And I don't think that's actually like the right thing. I think it's more about like when you have conversations about this, how do they react to it? And so I think I gave that girl who reached out to me, the 20 something year old girl who reached out to me, I said, you're probably entering a phase of life where you're going to start going to weddings. I think weddings are a really good way to like vibe check this and have conversations, not just to say like red flag, I'm out, but to just see how it goes. So say you get invited to your partner's friend's wedding, because you're going to get invited to his friend's weddings, your friend's weddings, maybe his cousin's wedding, whatever. Who buys the card? Who bought the gift? Who wrapped the gift? Who booked the hotel? Who figured out the coordinating of travel? Who thought about what we should wear? Who knew what the dress code was? Right? All of these things. Who was paying attention to all of this? If the answer is you, and it was his cousin's wedding, you could have a conversation about that and say, hey, you know what? I'm a guest at this wedding where I don't really know a lot of people. And I have somehow taken on a lot of the work of making sure that we got your cousin a nice card and a nice gift. And I wrapped that gift. And I've taken on a lot of the mental load of making sure this was a successful weekend. And in the future, I would love it if, especially if we're going to a wedding that really is for your family, your friends, and I don't really know them, I would like it if you took on this work. Because at the end of the day, it is work, especially if you don't know someone. You're like, I don't know what to get them. I got to find the registry and I got to buy them something from the registry and then ship it and then wrap it and the whole thing. That's a silly one, but but that is what the mental load is. It's a lot of small little things like that. It's a lot of small little pieces that add up to a very heavy amount of work, because what tends to happen too in relationships is women will find that they're responsible for what's called kin keeping, which is like making sure that you get his mom a card for Mother's Day and making sure that you involve his family in the birthday party and maintaining a relationship with your partner's family on their behalf. That is a very common dynamic. And when women don't do that, they get a lot of flack, right? The mother-in-law will say, "Oh, my awful daughter-in-law, she never calls." And it's like, well, maybe call your son, talk to your son about this. And I'm not saying you shouldn't maintain relationships. I maintain relationships with my in-laws. I have a great relationship with them. It's just more so about who do we expect to be in charge of that work and why? Why are we expecting her to do that? If he wasn't dating her, would he have gotten a card? Of course he would have, right? He was the guest. So I think there's little small conversations you can be having that are opportunities to do this work before you're deep in it. Because I think what gets really hard is when you get deep in it, you have kids and you have jobs and you own a home together, the stakes are much higher. The stakes are much, much higher. And it's a lot harder to dig out of that hole than it is to have that conversation when you're attending his cousin's wedding.
Yeah, it also gets harder too because of what we are as a society. We are so overscheduled.
Mhm.
Everyone does a million things. I am a huge contributor to what this looks like. I'm on a million different committees. I have 20 text chains going on for every single pocket of my life. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that I think it's probably even more important now where we are, where we have technology at our fingers. It does probably require a little bit more equitable play from both partners because of all the tasks that we have at hands for ourselves, for our children.
Yeah, I mean the expectations are different. I mean, I think about my childhood. Like I was allowed to walk to the bus. My kids aren't allowed to walk to the bus by themselves until like I don't know third grade. And then if there's younger siblings at the same time, they're not allowed to walk with theirs. So it's a whole thing, right? My mom was like, "Paige, you're 9. You've got it. You got it."
You're 2 years old. Why aren't you driving yet?
Yeah, yeah. Or like I even think about something silly. Like my sister was at a Dunkin' Donuts and she had a mobile order and she's like, I can see my coffee, but I can't leave them in the car, can I? And I'm like, back in the day, mom left us in the car while she went grocery shopping. Like it was, I don't know, the expectations were different. But like those are silly examples. But in general, the expectations on parents are higher. You are expected to coordinate all these play dates and be at every school activity and answer every single email and sign them up for all the activities. And even something silly like, my son learning to ride his bike. We live on a cul-de-sac. I was always allowed to ride my bike around my cul-de-sac, but now I worry because there's 12 different Amazon drivers who blow through my neighborhood every hour. And so our level of attention towards our kids and the expectations for parenting are higher. And then now with phones and computers and technology, we are so much more accessible. And so we're always being expected to work and do. And the work is now more invisible than it was, right? So something like ordering my kids' shoes, my mom would have had to take me to the store, measure my foot, try on a bunch of shoes, bring me home with the shoes. Like it was all visible. Somebody could see this happening. It was still like mental load and somebody might ignore it. But now I can literally pick up my phone, order my daughter a pair of shoes, probably 2 sizes, get them at home, try them on, and then send them back if they don't fit. And nobody has to know what even happened. And when I'm doing it on my phone, it looks like nothing. And yet I'm working, I'm ordering groceries, I'm answering an email, I'm filling out a form, I'm scheduling a doctor's appointment, I'm ordering prescriptions. I'm on my phone doing all these things and it looks like nothing. And so I think that's also another part of it is there's this expectation that work should look like work. And a lot of this mental load is just invisible. It truly is. It does not look like work. Sometimes it really is just all mental. Sometimes it's the emotional labor that truly you can't quantify. And so that I think is a really hard part about this conversation is that not all of this work is visible. And then you have to be so intentional about explaining it to someone else.
Ah, that's really good. You've really tapped into something. And this is very relevant to now and you have a whole thing on your Instagram about this. If you're sitting on your phone, it looks like you're scrolling when you're
Mhm.
actually doing deep work. You're doing calendar, you're doing appointments,
Yeah.
blah, 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 and communicating with whoever about what needs to be done. And so you've really tapped into something great, which is like, we've always looked at the work because it's been physical, it's been leaving the house.
Yeah.
Now, this is really something. It is so much more up in here, up in our brains. It is so much more invisible than ever.
Yeah. And that's I think that's the hard work of it all, right? It's easier, quote unquote, than ever to order groceries, to get toilet paper delivered to your house. Yet the work of remembering and knowing and doing and anticipating needs still sits with one person and that doesn't go away.
That's a
So that's that mental load. And people I think get confused between the act of a physical task, like groceries, for example, like putting groceries away. That's a physical task. The mental load is knowing what you need, remembering what you're running low on, not buying that snack because your daughter hates it now, whatever, it's that work. That's the ongoing checklist in your brain that is always happening and that does not go away.
What would you say out there to moms or partners who might be feeling overloaded? Is there anything you would like to leave us with?
Yeah, I always give the same piece of advice for this kind of question, which is I think it's very easy to feel like it's your fault. And a lot of people will tell you it is. You picked the wrong guy. You didn't set high enough standards. You didn't have enough conversations. You didn't plan enough. You didn't save enough money, whatever, the list goes on. You didn't do it right. In reality, I think that ignores the fact that there are societal expectations to overcome. There is systemic barriers, like we talked about, the lack of paid leave, the lack of childcare, the motherhood penalty. There's all of these things that we have to kind of jump over these hurdles. And we end up here not because it's our fault, but because this is the design. This is where we're supposed to end up with women sharing the largest burden of this work. And that was by design. That has always been the design of it. If you've ended up there, it is not your fault, but it is often made to feel like it's your fault. So I like to tell people if you've ended up in this position, it is very easy to feel guilty and to feel shame and to feel bad about it, which is why I think a lot of people don't talk about it with their friends, with their family. And I didn't. I never told anybody. It was like 3 years into posting online. My mom was like, I didn't realize any of that. I was like, Mom, where have you been? I haven't posted for like 3 years. But she's like, you never said anything. And I said, because I think as a society, we tell people that this is bad. Like you messed up. You guys messed up here. Like something went wrong. When in reality, from sharing, I've realized that more so than not, people have found themselves in this position. And knowing that, it makes it a lot easier to climb back out and to say, you know what, actually, this wasn't my fault. This probably wasn't my fault. This probably happened because of all these other things. And now that I know that, I can work with my partner to get out of it.
Creative Mamas Unplugged is produced by Breatheasy Productions with music by Jeremy Jurin. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to give my mama 5 stars and keep coming back. Thanks to us kids, there are plenty of stories to tell. And you are not alone.
We are inspired by you. Thank you for joining our Creative Mamas community. Support Creative Mamas Unplugged on Patreon to get your name in the credits, receive extra content, and earn some fun prizes. With this, we can keep creating, uplifting, and growing this incredible community together. We love you so much. Applause.